When we looked at the SpongeBob web games of 2010, I warned you about a terrifying creation that worked its way onto Nick.com as an old Flash game. This was Botocross, a rage-inducing driving game that tested the limits of players and became a viral sensation for its difficulty. Well, now that we're in 2011, I have no choice but to bring you some unfortunate news. This is Botocross 2. Very funny working, man. This company really wanted to see us suffer. But this time, there was a lot more to it, so let's check it out. You start by hearing the music from the original game and see this title screen of SpongeBob holding up 2 fingers, indicating that this is a sequel. Or maybe he's giving you a peace sign as a way of telling you need to be at peace before you endure this tribulation. But as soon as we start, we see that we have options this time. Not only can we select a character, but we can customize our vessel. Some of the options are really funny. No wonder this is so hard to control. You're driving a bathtub on snail shells. What did you expect? And you can unlock more stuff as you go. But once you've made your boat and selected a driver, you might be surprised to see we have collectibles this time. You grab these wrenches as you go, but if you die, they all reset. And that isn't the only change. There are 6 different environments with 3 stages of their own, and the background music for each of them is a variation on the main theme. The controls are the same as before. You use the arrow keys to balance the boat while moving it at the same time, trying to keep it balanced without spinning out of control. If you die, it's back to the start of the stage. It's extremely hard and will likely frustrate you beyond comprehension. It's a good thing 4 of the stages are playable from the start because a lot of people would be stuck on the first stage and never see the other environments. But frustration aside, the music and stage designs are really good and I like all the additional features that they added since the first one. Some of the obstacles can be fun to go through too, like this big hill you have to ride down. And if I had a nickel for every rage game that took place on a roller coaster. So anyway, this game is hard, but that's what Working Man intended. It's meant to frustrate us, and it succeeds in doing so. You can't get mad at a game when you know what you're getting into when you start it. Botocross 2 has some good stages and a fair amount of features, but I'm still gonna stay as far away from it as I can manage. So let's get away from this game and see what else came out this year. A much more simple Working Man game was A Log Way From Home. I couldn't find a version of this that ran correctly, but I was able to play it for a little bit before it bugged out. SpongeBob and Patrick are on opposite sides of a log and running down a stream. You have to flip back and forth between them, watching the one that faces the surface turn realistic from the lack of water. Then you use the individual mechanics. When Patrick's on top, you can jump. When SpongeBob's on top, you can dive. You keep flipping to avoid enemies and grab coins. It's surprisingly fun. You can get really into this one, and I like the mix of the 2 styles for SpongeBob and Patrick. Even the enemies above the water are realistic. This one's alright. But now that we're moving into the other games that came out at the start of the year, it should be noted that 2011 was essentially the year of the holiday specials. This next Working Man game, Candy Disorder, was released for Valentine's Day. This was elected Game of the Year for 2011. In it, you're SpongeBob in a factory and making chocolates for Valentine's Day. You watch them move on a conveyor belt, flicking away other things that don't belong there, and pull switches to make sure the machine keeps working. You have to monitor every lever because they'll tilt to the side if you don't pull them back in place. If they tilt too far, their respective part of the machine starts to break. Also, Patrick can show up dressed like this, and you have to smack him with your rolling pin. Otherwise, he'll take your chocolate. Also, entering a code will give you a turbo boost. That's handy. And this game is alright. A bit of a challenge, but interesting enough. It keeps you attentive, that's for sure. Working Man made a few more simple games this year too, so let's check out some of them. This one's Chop Chef, somewhat of a spin on Fruit Ninja. You control SpongeBob and you're facing off against Patrick by chopping all the food you can. But don't chop the pictures of Squidward. A line on the screen indicates how you're supposed to slice. The more accurate your slice is to the line, the more points you get. But you also have to be quick, because Patrick is fast. You'll need both speed and precision to beat him. It can be hard sometimes, but it's a lot of fun. If you like games like Fruit Ninja, this might be right up your alley. Great for fulfilling your desire to slice through things. Another simple Working Man game was RoboShot. Now give the music a listen. It's really ominous, but also really cool. So you're inside one of Plankton's evil robots and trying to destroy it. It's basically a different version of Sandy's Shrubbery Shakedown where you throw wrenches at parts of the robot to destroy it from the inside. I wonder if Robo SpongeBob's here so we can throw a wrench at him again. Now, amusing as this is, the text does seem a little weird. It doesn't look like it naturally fits in each box, and the game doesn't feel entirely official. It's decent, but that's just a strange aspect of it. It can get really fun though. So here's a really interesting one. Mad Bob Warrior Pants is a SpongeBob version of Mad Max. Never thought you'd see an official game like that, did you? You're driving the paddy wagon while being chased by Plankton and a band of thugs. It looks like they've hijacked the bus from Atlantis SquarePants. I can only assume they're making it move by singing. Imagine all those angry tough guys jamming out in there. But they're jumping on your car, so you have to jump to shake them off. And give the music a listen. Now that's awesome. The game is short and sweet, but I like it. Though it can be hard to shake the guys off your car sometimes, not entirely sure how that system works. But let's take a break from Workin' Man for now. There were a few other companies that made a mark this year, and we had a few noteworthy occurrences. For one, 2011 marked the end of the Nick Arcade, ending its long and prosperous run. In honor of its memory, let's do the tagline one last time. Nick.com. Oh. And this year was also tragic due to the fact that neither Sarbakan nor Smashing Ideas were anywhere to be seen. This was truly the start of the Workin' Man takeover that would continue throughout the 2010s. But another big company was still around, and they gave us one of the most incredible games Nick.com ever had to offer. SpongeBob's Big Adventures and its remake SpongeBob's Next Big Adventure are still beloved by many today. It was a massive point-and-click game where you traveled Bikini Bottom and completed missions, playing minigames along the way. It was made by MP Game Studio, the geniuses behind the original Super Brawl games and the first Block Party. They were essentially the Nirvana of Nick.com. Very short-lived, but their impact was astronomical. Now, the original game was lost for a time, fully replaced by Next Big Adventure, but it was eventually recovered, and I'm sure glad it was. First of all, the art style is beautiful. It has the usual MP Game Studio coloration. We have a ton of options to look at the top of the screen, and we even have currency. So we control SpongeBob as we go around completing missions and playing minigames. The overarching plot involves Plankton stealing snail food because he believes it to be the Krabby Patty secret formula for some reason. He steals Gary's food, so you fight him with a sling in a fairly easy boss fight where you just throw rocks at him while he bounces around. Then you can talk to fish and characters from the show. They say some pretty funny things. But once you get a map, you can teleport to different locations once you unlock them. At the Krusty Krab, you get this minigame where you find pipes by looking through the kitchen, then you unlock a Krabby Patty making game similar to the popular Snap-to-Play game Flip or Flop. Jobs like this help you earn money. The other job at the Krusty Krab is the cashier, which you do when Squidward asks you to fill in for him. It's similar to the Workin' Man game Krusty Cashier, where you solve math problems to figure out how much a customer owes you. Then you work your way through the line as quickly as you can so the customers don't get angry. You need to utilize both of these jobs because Patrick sends you on a mission to find his jellyfishing gear, but Mr. Krabs charges you for the jar. But once you find his stuff, you get a surprisingly difficult minigame where you have to make SpongeBob and Patrick jump to catch jellyfish at different heights. All the while, you have to avoid obstacles on the ground. It's easier said than done because you have to jump at just the right moment to make it over one. It can be hard to nail if you're coming off another jump, but this minigame is optional. Here's where it gets interesting. This fish at the Krusty Krab will send you to the frozen tundra from the episode Frozen Face-Off. There, he tells you that your friends are frozen in the tundra, and the abominable snow mollusk is on the loose. That means you have to save them. We're then thrown into what feels like an entirely different game. Now we use the arrow keys instead of the mouse to move SpongeBob through a platformer while jumping on blocks and collecting jelly beans. We have to find Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, and Sandy, who are frozen in blocks of ice. Then we push the ice blocks to a sled being driven by Gary. Then we get another section where we click to smash the ice. It's pretty fun, but this section is a lot harder than you might think it is. Some of the platforms can be hard to jump to, and there are enemies running around that can drain your health. Nothing is worse than this one section where you have to make a difficult jump, but there's an evil worm slithering around. The more you fail, the more you have to nail a jump over it. You might get it right the first few times, but it'll get you eventually. The platforms that crumble beneath you are also tough to work with because you have to be very specific when you make a jump. They don't give you a lot of time to situate yourself. But the stage is really neat. I wasn't expecting such a complex platformer in this. But even after you thaw everyone out, the excitement isn't over. The abominable snow mollusk arrives and you have to fight her. Your health is fully regenerated, so thank Neptune for that, and you have to avoid her attacks until Patrick throws you a jelly bean. Then you use your sling to throw the jelly bean at her. You have to hit an arrow key combination to make your mark. You do this until she leaves. But unfortunately, it's immediately followed by my least favorite part of the game. When you go to the chum bucket, Karen tells you that she'll only tell you where Plankton is if you beat her at Pong 5 times in a row. It goes on for a long time and gets kinda tedious. It doesn't help that the music isn't exactly the most uplifting. I think they should have made this section shorter. Maybe it wouldn't have felt so long if you only had to beat her 3 times. But once that's over with, you head downtown to stop Plankton from stealing snail food. You fight him with your sling again and you win. And yeah, Plankton is a lot bigger than he should be. Maybe his diet of snail food is helping him grow. But then that's it. Honestly, I think this might have been the best SpongeBob Flash game to come out this year. There's so much to do and you can spend a lot of time playing this if you want to make the most of all the games in it. I like this one a lot, and there's a reason it has such a lasting legacy. Even when they weren't making Super Brawls, MP Game Studio was still giving us quality work. I'm always glad to revisit this, but for now, we have a lot more to get through. Let's take a look at some of the stuff other companies made. This is Pro Skater by Ham in the Fridge. They didn't make a lot of games on Nick.com, but the ones they made sure stood out. They had previously made Gary's Adventure in 2009, which was alright in concept, but a little wonky. But this is a really big game of theirs, so let's check it out. First of all, great music. You can either play by yourself or against other players, but the 4 modes are mostly the same regardless. We can choose to play as either SpongeBob, Patrick, or Sandy. They have some really good outfits in this. SpongeBob's is basically how I dress in real life. Very grunge. The first mode is called Freestyle. You're on a ramp and you repeatedly tap the left or right arrow keys to build up speed. Then you hit an arrow key combination to perform a move in the air. It's a little hard to get the hang of. Building up speed isn't as easy as you might think it is, and there aren't very many tricks you can do either. I'd recommend To The Ed's Stream if you want something similar to this mode, but a little easier to manage. Also, the billboard back here says chum is fun. Come on, how could they get something like that wrong? Everyone knows it's chum is fun. Gosh. The second mode is a downhill race. You use the left and right arrow keys to race the other characters down a hill. You avoid obstacles and try to reach the bottom before them. This is kinda fun and the stage design is cool. It's also really forgiving. You can hit most of the obstacles and still manage to come in first. I really appreciate that. But the third mode is the most fascinating. It's a joust, but with skateboards. Good to see we're keeping the medieval traditions alive. You have a big pineapple Q-tip thing, and you have to swing it at your opponent to knock them off their skateboard. Your enemy is also unarmed, so this really isn't a fair fight. It's fun, but really quick and to the point. And the final mode is High Jump, which is similar to Freestyle, but you're going for a high jump instead of trying to do tricks. It's okay. The whole game is fine. There are a good few modes to choose from, and you can have some fun with it, but I do wish there was a little more to each of the modes. The potential is there, but it would be nice to see it expanded on. Imagine a whole SpongeBob Tony Hawk Pro Skater game. Seriously surprised Nickelodeon hasn't tried anything like that. Even The Simpsons tried it once. Oh, so they did. But enough of that one. Now before we get into the barrage of holiday games, I do want to make a quick mention of something. On September 30th, a big game called SpongeBob and the Clash of Triton came out. based on the episode The Clash of Triton. It was a SpongeBob version of the game Rampage, with cutscenes fully voiced by Perch Perkins. It was developed by Real Networks and Chewy Software, and this was designated as the last Nick Arcade game, but because of delays, it didn't come out until long after the Nick Arcade fell through. You could also physically buy it, which wasn't the case with most Nick Arcade games. The game is okay, but just a little more action-packed than the episode. I've said it before, but I'm not entirely sure who sat in front of their TV, watched The Clash of Triton, and said, I'm really getting Rampage vibes from this. Check out my other review if you want to hear more about this one. For now, it's time to take on Halloween. When October rolled around, a new development team appeared on the scene and took the wheel for all SpongeBob Halloween games this year. Say hello to Gonzo Games. Now, Gonzo Games was different. Very, very different. Their games had basic concepts, but had a certain air about them that made them feel out of the ordinary, like you were playing a bootleg SpongeBob game that somehow worked its way onto the official website. That's largely why I used to think they were the ones who made Frank and Patrick. But let's run over the games they did make. In Fang In There, you're SpongeBob and you're being chased by a vampire Patrick, jumping on platforms and flipping yourself to get away from him. The most notable aspect of this game is Patrick's laugh when you die. It's fun, but simple. Another simple one is Plunder Blunder, where you're chasing a ghost who's eating pizza. Other pirates are chasing you, so you have to shoot them to make them back off. The guy in front can also throw pizza at you. Man, I sure wish people would throw pizza at me in real life. Unless it's the pizza SpongeBob just grabbed off the street in Pizza Toss. In that case, you can keep it. Ghoul Getter is probably my favorite. You're a ghost and you're flying in the sky. You have to hit clouds to give yourself a boost and fly even higher. It's really addicting. Love this one. But the strangest of the Gonzo games is one called Zombie Breakout. All of your friends are lost, and it's up to you to find them. During a zombie apocalypse, you have to shoot zombies and find your friends laying around. Now tell me, would you have ever expected this premise from an official SpongeBob game? One where you go around shooting actual zombies and saving your friends from being eaten? Wow. So when are we getting the official SpongeBob Left 4 Dead parody? But this is fun. Again, it doesn't really feel official. Something is very uncanny about it. Maybe it's the art style. It really sticks out among the others, that's for sure. But now let's enter November. The Thanksgiving games are coming up, but let's hold on a second. Starting on the 7th and running through the 11th, a special SpongeBob event aired on Nickelodeon. It was called SpongeBob's Runaway Road Trip. 5 new episodes aired, and each of them were based on the concept of going on vacation. Only one of them didn't have some variation of the word vacation in the title. But this was a tremendous event. I remember the ads for it being constant. So to honor this event, Workin' Man made a pretty big game on Nick.com that drew inspiration from each episode. This is Oh Snap! Road Trip. This game is actually somewhat of a successor to Plankton's Krusty Bottom. Weekly, you go around different levels, taking pictures of things you find interesting. You can also throw seashells at people or things to make them do funny stuff. You're judged on all the photos you take, but you should prioritize taking pictures of people. Those get better grades. Unfortunately though, aging technology hasn't been on this game's side, so it runs very slowly. This makes it hard to play because it often freezes for a few seconds when you click on something, but the settings are all unique and the animations can be pretty funny. I also like how your shell and photograph counters are 3D, reminds me of the AWE style. But once you finish a stage, you select from your 5 best photos, then you're graded on them. Then you can edit them and make them funnier by using little stickers. You can only do so much, but the feature is nice to have. And I like seeing how they use different instances and environments from the show. It's a very lively and impressively made game, and the later stages get even more interesting. In this one, you board Sandy's rocket, then you walk around in it before heading to the moon. You even get mid-level cutscenes. This was where I also discovered blue ribbon shots. No, not those blue ribbon shots. These are special events that are particularly good to get a picture of, such as Mr. Krabs floating away here. And what's with that face, Sandy? But the wild card stage is especially wild. Fitting, right? You explore this foresty place with all sorts of unusual inhabitants. But if these creatures and the disturbing plant life aren't enough to scare you, we get to dive into the ocean in the next stage, even though we're already in the ocean. But it's the deeper and scarier ocean this time. The more oceany ocean, if you will. Look at this, we're walking into the abyss. This is my absolute worst nightmare. And this character is named Nessie, by the way. Sometimes the pictures at the end will tell you the names of the random NPCs. But the other really amusing stage is this one, where an earthquake causes SpongeBob and Sandy to fall underground. You can take pictures while you fall, and if you look to your right, you might see a falling potato. But like I said before, this game is really impressive. There's so much to it, and you can spend a lot of time trying to find all the secrets in every stage. Working Man put their best foot forward with this one. Good job. So coming off of Oh Snap Road Trip, we're entering an age dominated by one company in particular. One company that rose out of seemingly nowhere, dropped a ton of Thanksgiving and Christmas games, then returned to their cave to never be seen again. Please welcome Indigo Entertainment. And okay, that isn't entirely true. They primarily made games for Cartoon Network and even made some for Nick shows like The Fairly OddParents here and there. But to conclude this video, let's go through the SpongeBob ones they made for Thanksgiving and Christmas. There are quite a few, so strap yourselves in. Let's start with the popular one. Their most notable Thanksgiving game was probably Quirky Turkey. Instead of bringing a turkey for dinner, Patrick decided to dress up as one. Now SpongeBob thinks Patrick is a real turkey. Hey, I thought they didn't know what a turkey was. But to be fair, Patrick kinda asked for this by dressing up as the turkey he and SpongeBob were planning to eat. I mean, I know he's supposed to be stupid, but come on. So you control Patrick and run away from SpongeBob, gradually moving up and down a street while avoiding obstacles. They both look rather happy about this turn of events. It's pretty much what you'd expect. Run down the street and stay away from SpongeBob. Jump over stuff and don't trip. It's alright. Though I also found a watered down version of this on the website Yiv. It removes the instructions and the ability to move up and down the street. Yiv hosted quite a few bootleg games, including a lot of the weird SpongeBob Doctor ones, so I'm not entirely surprised to see this here. Just not sure why they picked this of all games to do this with. But let's check out another big Thanksgiving game. This is Dinner Defenders. Listen to this music. You can tell we're in for something big. So we get an intro where Mr. Krabs tells us we need to protect a turkey patty. If you're expecting a patty made from turkey, you're half right. It's actually a regular Krabby Patty with a fully cooked turkey stuffed into it. Hey, it probably tastes better than a regular turkey burger. So the gameplay is very interesting. You're guiding Gary, who's carrying the patty, and shooting at Plankton's robots that are trying to steal it. You can also go into random people's houses to find bonuses. I assume we're robbing them. Plankton's robots are also controlled by his relatives, and I find it curious that Plankton himself will sometimes come out and fight you. You'd think he'd be a big boss or something, but no, he's just a normal henchman. Reminds me of how Man Ray appeared as just a regular enemy in a stage during Super Sponge. Kind of a strange decision. But you work your way through Bikini Bottom and protect the turkey burger. It's okay, but escort missions aren't usually my cup of tea. I like the creativity that went into this though, and I still find it hilarious how they just made it a patty with a turkey in it. That's great. Now the third Thanksgiving game is Banquet Bolt. This one also has great music. It's Thanksgiving night and the anchovies have come to party. The Krusty Krab did some remodeling and now the ovens are facing these really long tables. You run to each of the ovens to grab a Krabby Patty, which you then throw down one of the tables to feed an oncoming anchovy. They can throw cornucopias at you, which you can then use to call Squidward, like this. It also took me way too long to realize I could walk between the tables. That was a useful game changer. But this is okay. Not the most groundbreaking game in existence, but alright. So now let's move on to the festive wintry season of December. There are 4 games left, so let's work our way through them and bring 2011 to a close. The first one is Postal Panic, which starts right away. You control Plankton and use a device to steal people's mail. You're trying to ruin Christmas by keeping the Bikini Bottomites from sending letters to Santa. How cruel. But hey, it's an ambitious plot. The characters from the show also appear, but they're harder to steal from. The game is really easy though, and I like it. But actually, this isn't the only Christmas game where you control Plankton and try to ruin the holiday season. This one here is Gift Lift, a game similar to Line Rider where you draw the path for Plankton to ride a sled down. You have to coordinate Plankton so he snags what these jellyfish are holding, but he also has to avoid these red ones. It's fun to send him flying too. But the game over is hilarious. Ouch. But this game's great. Might be my favorite of the Indigo collection. But let's switch gears from trying to ruin Christmas and try to save it instead. This is Operation Holiday Hero. Wow, I sure do review a lot of games that start with Operation, don't I? This is a SpongeBob version of Jetpack Joyride, which came out a few months earlier. It's a little hard, mostly because the snowballs you shoot at robots are completely ineffective. But the screen is constantly moving and you have to jump over enemies while collecting gifts. Another thing that's worth noting is how long it takes for you to die whenever you take your final hit. They really want you to soak in the agony of losing, feeling those last pitiful moments before it all goes dark. It's alright, but a bit of a challenge. So a much less challenging one would be Gifts A Go-Go. You have a tower of different colored gifts and you throw them to fish that are wearing clothes that match the color. It's also fun to watch the tower fall when you have to pull one out from the middle of it. It's a nice little satisfying experience. So that brings us to our final Indigo Entertainment game. This is one I was unfamiliar with until recently, so let's check it out. This is Whale of a Sail. With a title like that, you might assume Pearl is involved somehow. I mean, she kinda is, but not significantly. Guess they just wanted to use the expression. The music is awfully playful. Now this is more of a Thanksgiving game than a Christmas one because of the decorations, but it's kind of a mix between the two, so I figured we'd end with this one. You control SpongeBob and Sandy and you're working in a store. I guess the Krusty Krab wasn't paying enough, so the sponge had to get a second job for the holiday season. And look at his face the entire time. What are you staring at? So you're running the store and customers are coming in, including Pearl. See, there's our whale. You see what customers want, so you click and drag them to the right aisle. Then SpongeBob will take them to it. Then once they have what they're looking for, you bring them to one of 3 registers. This is how they pay. Sandy then wraps whatever they bought, then you have to bring it to them. So yeah, this is a lot like Diner Dash. It's a lot to keep up with and can get overwhelming very quickly. It doesn't take its time before it bombards you with customers. You really have to be on top of your game. I imagine this is how it feels to work in a store around the actual holiday season. And listen to the sound the customers make when they get frustrated. I feel the same way. So if games like Diner Dash are fun to you, you might enjoy this one. They stress me out though, but I still respect them. And that's going to do it for the SpongeBob web games of 2011. So this was definitely a notable year, with big games like Motocross 2, Oh Snap Road Trips, SpongeBob's Big Adventures, and an abundance of holiday games. It's no surprise that this was a popular time on Nick.com. A new era had begun, and we were seeing all the creations that were coming around in it. The site was continuing to change, and so were the games being made for it. Many more would continue to come out as we moved into 2012, and this would keep up all throughout the 2010s. There's still plenty more to see, so thanks for sticking around, and I look forward to checking out the rest of these. Be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter and Twitch, which are linked in the description below, and tune in to our next installment. Thank you for joining me. I will see you in the next memory.